Okay.
All right. Good evening. If you are joining us live, then it is Wednesday, April 15th of 2026. And if you're viewing this later on YouTube as a recording, then thank you for tuning in. You are welcome to pause and fast forward as you would like to. My name is Carla Whitaker. I'm an academic coordinator for CalSOAP. We're the California Student Opportunity and Access Program. And I'm joined here today by a volunteer, Marcy Bush, who is a counselor. And what she's going to be doing is covering the Q&A. So if you have any questions as we go through, please put your question in the Q&A. You can do it either anonymously or with your name, either way. And we're going to do our best to answer the question. So if she needs to, she will unmute herself and she'll ask me the question out loud so that I can address it with everybody. I do want to mention that you are going to have access to this recording. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to put it on our CalSOAP website in the blog and webinar section. So I'm pasting that in the chat right now. You'll notice that you won't be able to actually type something in the chat to me, but you can type questions in the Q&A. So if any questions come up, feel free to type them into the Q&A. You might see that along the bottom of your Zoom screen that you can get the Q&A to come up. It might be next to three dots that say more. So you will have access to that, and you will also have access to the slide deck that I will share a copy of on our website tomorrow as well. So yes, you'll have access to the recording. Yes, you'll have access to the slide deck. And yes, you can still ask questions through the Q&A feature. So please don't hesitate to do that. And as we get going, any questions that you have, please ask them. All right. So you'll see behind me on my screen, it says it's application season for community colleges. I know a lot of the universities, their applications were due back in November, and a lot of students are finding out last month and this month if they were accepted or not. And for many people, they also are looking at a community college. And for fall 2026, all the local community colleges, those fall 2026 applications are open right now. Those applications are free. I encourage everybody to fill one out. Say you don't end up going to that community college because you end up going to a university. That's awesome, but it's great to have it done and filled out and have your spot saved, and it's free. So there's really no downside to that. So I just have that kind of as a little bit of a reminder. But at this point in the spring, April is a big month when you're finding out, am I accepted or not? Am I waitlisted? Am I not accepted? What is my plan? Where am I going to go? And then also, how are we going to pay for it? And you should be getting financial aid offers from the financial aid offices at colleges. And now is when you have to read those and figure out, how do I accept this? Which do I accept? What's the right decision to make? And so I'm going to try to give you a little bit of guidance for if you're now a senior or you're going to become a senior, or you're a parent of a senior, you're a counselor that helps seniors. I'm hoping that this guidance helps you to understand the financial aid process. And because for a lot of us, by the end of this month, is our deadline to make that decision, and then to make sure that we are accepting the financial aid and understanding what we're accepting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slide deck. And while I do that, I won't be able to see the Q&A, but Marcy will be able to see it. So if there's anything you have questions on, put it in the Q&A, and then she will raise it to my attention. Let me just hide the meeting controls. Okay. So we want you to be able to make as informed of a decision as possible about your financial aid offer. So when you're getting financial aid, it might be coming from a variety of sources. So for example, if you filled out the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application as a 12th grader or as a college student, you will be, some of the money that you might be eligible for, it might be coming from the federal government. It might be coming from the state of California if you're going to a college in California. It might be coming from the institution itself, like your college itself. And also, they might include outside packaging. If, for example, if you have a scholarship that is going instead of directly to you, if it's going through your financial aid office. So it might be coming from all those different sources, but the actual package is the one from the college you choose. So whichever college you choose to attend, their financial aid office creates an individualized college financing plan just for you, each student, and a financial aid award just particular to every student, depending on the results of them filling out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act, or in some cases, the CSS profile, if it's a private university. So when your college financial aid office sends your aid offer, which they will do through your college portal, you'll need to decide which aid to accept. That's true. You don't have to accept everything you're offered. Some people would say, but why wouldn't I take everything that's offered? And I'll explain why you might or might not want to do that. The key to this is you want to accept kind of like in stages. And you first want to accept the aid you don't have to pay back. It's also sometimes called gift aid, but every college might name it a little differently, package it, or refer to it a little differently. But if you don't have to pay it back, we're going to call that gift aid. That is free money, and that is the stuff you absolutely want to accept as soon as you're ready, that you know, yes, I'm going to go to this college, then yes, you can accept that part of your financial aid. So what parts are gift aid? If you're offered anything that includes the word grant, that is gift aid, which means that is, if that is money you do not have to pay back in the form of money. There might be special grants like a Teach for America grant or some kind of College Core grant where you're getting this in exchange for your commitment to in the future do community service or something like that. Sometimes it's just based on your income level. Sometimes it's based on a combination of your family income, your SAI, your student aid index, and then also your what you have been offered in terms of like federal and state money. So if it says grant or if it says scholarship, that's good news. That is gift aid, and that's the first thing you want to accept. So if it says Pell Grant, click accept. If it says Cal Grant, click accept. If it's any kind of grant or if it has the word scholarship associated with it, the understanding with grants and scholarships is that you are not expected to pay them back, at least not in the form of money. All right. So grants and scholarships, it's a pretty safe bet to go ahead and accept those. It'll give you a package where you can literally kind of click boxes and you're clicking which ones you want to accept. Another category of money that you might see in your financial aid award is work study. I'm going to classify this as earned money. So if they offer you $2,000 a year in work study, what does that mean? Are you getting a check for $2,000? How do you get this $2,000? So what this is saying is you don't have to get a job while you're in college, but if you would like to get a part-time job, often on campus, and then you have work study, basically every time you earn a paycheck, you earn the same money that anybody else would, whether or not they have work study. You make the exact same hourly wage. You're working the exact same job, the exact same hours as any other college student in that same department. But the difference is that every time you get, let's say you get $100 in your paycheck, half of that comes from work study and the other half usually comes from the department that's hiring you. Let's say it's the Department of Biology, or let's say it's the admissions department or whatever. If it's $100, $50 of that comes from that department and $50 comes from your work study. This is good for you as a college student because guess who every college department wants to hire? Students with work study, because they know that at least half that student's salary is going to be paid by that student's work study award. And so you'll keep earning that money as you work until a maximum of, let's say it's $2,000, and let's say you earn that $2,000. And sometimes for a lot of departments, like for us at CalSoap, for example, when we hire college students, even if their work study is depleted, we still continue to employ them and pay them just 100% of their salary instead of just 50%. So even if it runs out, you usually still can keep your job very often. And so work study is something that's optional for you to take. It just doesn't come to you in the form of straight cash. You're earning it every time you earn a paycheck for a work study job on campus. So I also encourage people to accept their work study unless they know absolutely 100% There is no way that they're going to have a job, say for the this whatever year it is. Maybe it's their freshman year of college and it's a big transition and they won't be able to work and go to school at the same time. You don't have to accept your work study. You can decline it. And sometimes you can even ask the financial aid office if it can be repackaged. Unfortunately, it usually won't be repackaged as gift aid, but sometimes it can be repackaged as a little bit higher amount of a loan to borrow. So that brings us to the third kind of aid that you might be offered, and this is loans. Now, loans are not gift aid, they are borrowed money. And if it's borrowed, that means you're going to have to pay it back. And unfortunately, with loans comes something called interest. In other words, if you borrow $100, you're not just paying back $100. Let's say there is 10% interest on that loan. That means you're paying back $100 plus an additional $10, depending how often that interest compounds. So you might actually be paying much more than $10 in interest, even if it's 10%. It depends. Does it compound daily or quarterly or annually? Those are some of the terms that you're going to have to start researching and familiarizing yourself with. And you can, if you're not sure, you can always ask Chat GPT, hey, if I accept this loan, and it says it's 10% interest, how long is it going to take me to pay it back? And how much of that is going to be interest versus how much is the principal? So I tell people with loans, be cautious. You don't have to accept a loan, even if it's offered to you. It's great that it's offered, but you can choose, hey, I do or do not want to take on this debt. Because again, it is debt and you're going to have to repay it. There's different kinds of loans, and we'll talk about subsidized versus unsubsidized, and we'll talk about student versus parent loans. But I just want people to be aware that even if the college is calling this financial aid, because it is financial aid, that does not always mean that it is gift aid. It could be financial aid that you will eventually have to repay. So you want to make sure if you're investing in college that hopefully it's going to be mean investing in a career and a job that lets you make enough money that you can pay any student loans back. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're just saying, yes, click, definitely borrow that money, and not thinking about it again, because it's going to add up and you're going to start having monthly payments. And sometimes it could be for the rest of your life. So you want to really be careful about accepting loans. You want to think about it. You want to decide as a family, and you want to make a decision about, okay, what's the maximum we're willing to borrow? Okay. So, as far as eligibility and conditions, for most grants, if they are need-based, it means it's really based on the family income, which is the student income if the student has any, which is zero if they don't. And then until they're 24, they're also counting the parents' income. If the parents are married and file taxes jointly, then they're looking at that joint tax return. If the parents are maybe not married or are separated or divorced or remarried, it becomes a little trickier. Well, who do I list as my parent contributor? What the FAFSA says is you're going to list the parent that contributes more to the student financially, whether that's because they make more money or whether that's because the student lives with them, or whether they're providing the student with things like food, clothing, and housing. But if that parent is remarried, then you're also going to count the step parent's income. So in any case, however you filled out your FAFSA or your DREAM Act, to be eligible for a need-based grant, you might have to have a certain level of need. In other words, like the lower the income, and or the bigger your family, the more need-based need like grants that you might be eligible for. Some grants might also require a certain GPA. Like in California, there's something called Cal Grant A, and it's based on financial need, but it is also based on maintaining a certain minimum GPA or a certain number of units. They might require that you be enrolled at least half-time or sometimes full-time in college classes. It might only be available for a certain number of years. Like, for example, they might say, hey, if you started a university, you can only accept 4 years full-time of Cal Grant. Or if you're transferring from a community college, you'll have 2 years of Cal Grant to apply to the university, something like that. So just make sure that you understand, and you'll be able to click on these and understand, how am I getting this grant? Oh, this is a federal one. This is a state one. This is from the college itself. And this one might be based on maintaining a certain GPA or a certain number of units. All right. So scholarships. Scholarships and grants are that category. They do not need to be repaid, but do pay attention to eligibility requirements. Maybe for certain scholarships, it might be required that you go into a certain job, a certain career, like teaching when you're finishing college. It might require, if it's a renewable scholarship where you get to reapply for it every year, then it might have a minimum GPA that you have to maintain in college. Now, some scholarships are just one-time things where you're getting it one time, you're applying for it as a senior graduating high school, you're getting it, you're using it for your freshman year of college, but it might just be a one-time scholarship that you don't get to count on your sophomore or junior or senior year in college. And if that's the case, it's great to get that aid, but just consider next year you're not going to have that aid if it's a one-time scholarship. If you are going to have it next year, or if you can reapply to keep it, for future years of college, make sure that you know like things like deadlines of when you have to apply to renew it. There's a grant called the Teach Grant, the one I was referring to, where if you're teaching in communities that have a high need for teachers and you're committing to a certain number of years of doing that, there's a special grant that goes along with that that helps pay for your college. Then if you change your mind and you don't teach in those communities, it then becomes a loan and you have to effectively pay it back. But if you do provide your number of community service hours teaching, so to speak, then your that grant is paid off basically. Okay, so check the terms and make sure you understand why you're eligible for things like scholarships and grants. Some scholarships might come from outside sources. Maybe it might be a scholarship from a local club. It might be like a Coca-Cola scholarship, a local business scholarship. It might be from like Dell Computers. It might be from the San Diego Foundation. So check with these sources, and usually they are going to pay that aid directly to your college's financial aid office. But sometimes the scholarship might come directly to you, the student. Usually that's more in the case of like a contest, like an essay or a video contest or an art contest. But for most scholarships, they don't make a check to the student, or they don't make a payment to the student. They usually pay your college's financial aid office, who then can apply that to whatever you owe, whether it's tuition, fees, room and board, whatever college expenses you might owe the college that year. And again, federal work study, this is money that you are offered a certain amount per year, but you have to earn it to make it. In other words, you have to have a job. A part-time job in college can be great. It can actually help you with time management and help you balance your work and study time. Research shows that students who work part-time jobs often develop better time management skills than those who do not. But it depends how involved and active you are in other things like sports and clubs and community service and how many units you're taking. You don't want to overwhelm yourself. And notice that it says students that have part-time jobs. You can't be working full-time and going to school full-time. I shouldn't say you can't. It's a very, very heavy load to try to manage that. Okay. But if, say, you are only working maybe 10 hours a week, that becomes very manageable along with your college classes. Okay, now you can get a loan from a variety of places. Let's start with federal student loans. These are ones that might be offered from the federal government if you filled out a FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Notice that repayment of that loan will be required one day with interest. They might say this is a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan. If you're offered subsidized, I always have like a little trick to learn, you know, like remember terms like grants are great because you don't have to pay them back. Subsidized is super. And the reason subsidized is super is because the interest does not accrue while the students are in college. They're getting a special deal where the government is actually paying the interest every month until the student graduates from college or finishes college. So the interest does not accrue while you're in college. That's a big deal. That's a good thing. So if you're offered a subsidized loan, that's the best kind to take. You may or may not be offered that, but I'm just letting you know that's what subsidized means. It means the government pays the interest while you're in college. If it's unsubsidized, the interest begins accruing as soon as you start taking those funds. So the interest starts ticking right away. I have a loan simulator that is provided by the federal government where you can kind of look up and see What if I were to borrow this much money? Or what if I were to borrow this much money a year for 4 years? According to like current interest rates, what would I have to repay and when would I have to repay it? And like how would it be a monthly payment of $100 or $300 or $500? Would I be paying that for a year or 5 years or 10 years or 20 years? But that loan simulator can be a good that could be a good tool. And Marcy, if you're able to click on that link and actually just paste it into the chat, if you're able to do that, that would be helpful so that they have access to it. But it's something that's on the Federal Student Aid website, their loan simulator. And it's easy to play around with numbers and enter lots of different scenarios, different amounts you're borrowing, different numbers of years that you'd be borrowing. And that way you can get a sense of like, okay, this one means crushing debt and we're not going to do that versus, we'll do something else. We'll go to a community college. We will work and save money. We will pursue this scholarship or this fellowship or whatever, but we can't take on this much debt versus, okay, well, this is a reasonable amount that I could agree to pay back after graduation. I do want to make a distinction also if the loan is in the student's name. The student actually does not have to start repaying that loan if it's a loan for college. If it's a college loan, the student does not have to begin repaying that until at the latest 6 months after graduation, and they could actually defer it again if they've applied to graduate school and are going into like a master's or a doctorate or a credentialing program. So the student loan, the student is the one taking out the money, and because they're a student, they're not expected to start paying back that loan until graduation. If it's a parent loan, for example, a PLUS loan, the parents, you have to start repaying immediately. So if the students start school in like August, you're probably going to have your first loan payment to start paying that back in September. So the same way if you borrowed money to buy a house, a home, and the same way if you borrowed money to buy a car, and you have to start making payments on that usually within about a month, and their monthly payments, parents, that's what you would be doing. So a student loan, they don't have to start repaying it until graduation or after graduation. A parent loan is in the parent's name and they have to start paying it back immediately, like, the next month. So I just want to make sure people understand that distinction. You don't have to accept a federal loan, even if one is offered to you. You might be in a situation where the state is offering you a loan. Like say, for example, you're going to college in California. California does have some loans that they will offer from their state money. The terms might or might not be as favorable as federal loan terms. There's something called a California Dream Loan that is possible for an AB 540 eligible student because they're not eligible for any federal aid, but they might be eligible for state aid in the form of like state work study or a state loan. If you're specifically going to the University of California, a UC college, that I have a link here that we can put in the chat and we can share in our slide deck tomorrow on the website about the University of California financial aid, the types of dream loans that are available. So another way you can get loans, like if you're not getting it from your college, you're not getting it from the state, and you're not getting it from the federal government, another option is for you to go with private loans. So again, it's a loan, so it has to be repaid with interest. And again, the borrowing terms might or might not be as good as federal loan terms. When I say the borrowing terms, what I'm usually talking about, the main thing is the interest rate. Sometimes it's also the conditions of repayment, like when you have to start paying it back, but that interest rate is key. The lower the interest rate, the better it is for you as a borrower. So if you're checking around and saying, well, this is the interest rate on a federal loan, this is the interest rate on a loan from my private credit union or from this online organization, you want to make sure the interest is as low as possible. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not here to tell you, take it from the government, take it from a private bank, you take it from your uncle. You can borrow from whoever you choose, but I would say the most important thing is making sure that interest rate is competitive and that it is as low as possible so you have the least amount to pay back when it comes to paying it back. Also, some people prefer to go through a private loan because, quite frankly, they don't want the government really up and having access to their financial information as much. or maybe they have a personal history or a personal relationship with their local bank or their local credit union or their local organization, that they trust, and they are able to actually go in and talk to a human and not just do something on a computer. So sometimes that's a reason why people might choose to take a private loan instead of a government loan, is because of their personal history, with a certain bank, or maybe that bank is going to offer them a fantastic interest rate. And you could get it as just a quote personal loan, or you could say this is a college loan, like this is going to be used for a student's college. And sometimes those loans have different terms, like different lower interest rates and things like that, if it's specifically going to be used for college education purposes. Okay, so a couple ways to minimize your borrowing. Tuition payment plans. Usually, if colleges say, hey, this is the tuition for a year, they're not going to say it's $20,000 in tuition and here you owe it all up front at the beginning of the year. Usually, they have interest-free monthly payment options so that you can start in, say, like August or September, and you can ask to pay, and it might be over a 10-month period, it might be over a 12-month period, but whatever it is, that the portion of tuition that you might be paying, your college might say, okay, we'll break this into 10 payments, equal payments, or we'll break this into 12 payments. And every month the family makes a payment toward either the tuition or other costs involved in college. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau also has a tool, and we'll put this in the chat as well, and it will be accessible to you. But they have a tool that helps you understand actual costs. So college costs more than just tuition, right? Tuition is a big part of it, but you're also going to have to eat just like any other human. You're going to have a meal plan or cook meals for yourself, or be going to cafeterias on campus, whatever it is, however you're eating, that's part of the cost. Also, if you're living on campus in a dorm, if you're living off campus in an apartment, if you're living with your parents, that kind of changes the costs a little bit. So that's also part of considering a cost of attendance. You will probably have to buy your books and supplies. That's part of the cost. You might have to buy a parking permit or get transportation. That's part of the cost. You'll have to have student health insurance. There's another cost. You probably have a bill for your cell phone or anyway, you get the idea of, like, just being a human, you're going to have these costs, whether you're in college or not. But being in college makes it so that even if those are above and beyond tuition, sometimes your financial aid will pay for things like including parts of your housing, parts of your food, parts of your, anything that you need to spend money on. I recommend that people create a budget to borrow only what they truly need. If they say, hey, your credit score means you can borrow $5,000 a year, that doesn't mean that you have to accept the full 5,000. Maybe you only want to borrow 2,500 of that to keep it down. Maybe you only want to borrow 1,000 of that. Okay, so you can decide if what they offer you is going to be the maximum amount that they can offer. You don't have to accept that maximum. You can say accept, but I only want to accept a certain amount. So you can start small. You can always borrow more later as long as it's still under that limit that they gave you. But the number they're going to give you is not like the amount that they're forcing you to take. They're saying this is the maximum amount that you can borrow. So you can start by borrowing less, and then if you need to borrow more, you can, go in and request to borrow more because your original limit was higher. Okay. So how to accept your aid is actually the simplest part. When you log into your college portal, the financial aid office will send you this package, and they're going to be sending you a college financing plan. Will have very simple, easy instructions, including, please accept what you want to accept. Okay, here's the list of what you're being offered. Which ones would you like to accept? And it's usually as simple as clicking a box and accepting what you want to accept, and not clicking the box of what you don't want to accept. If you are taking out a loan from the government, you might also need to sign what's called a promissory note. So that's something that sometimes student and or parent need to sign if a loan is part of their financial aid package. You also need to complete entrance counseling for loans. Like sometimes before you can take a loan, they make you take like a little 15-minute online class or attend something or answer a little online quiz so that you really understand what that loan means and what terms mean and what things like interest means and subsidized and unsubsidized and things like that. And also review all the loan terms and repayment conditions before accepting. I don't want somebody to accept a parent loan and then say, oh, I didn't realize we had to start paying it back right away. You do have to start paying it back right away if the parent is the borrower. It's only if the student is the borrower that you can wait until 6 months after graduating or separating from school. So those are just things that I know nobody reads the fine print, but you can at least read the main bullet points, let's say. Okay. Most colleges are going to offer what's called a CFP or a college financing plan. So, when you get this financial aid package, it was going to look different depending on the college. There's unfortunately no national or international standard saying all financial aid award packages have to look the same, but it'll usually start with you, the student, you like your name, maybe your birth date and identifying information. It'll somewhere on there have the cost of attendance at that school. Like the tuition and fees will be a hard cost, like that is an absolute cost that is not going to change. Whereas things like housing and food, that might change depending on where you're deciding to live or if you have a meal plan or not. Books and supplies, this is an estimate, not an amount they're charging. Transportation, that's again an estimate, other costs. And then it'll have what's called your SAI, your student aid index. And this is a number based on the FAFSA and the methodology being used by that college. Basically, the lower your SAI, the more need-based aid you can get. If you have a high SAI, let's say your SAI is $5,000 or higher, it doesn't mean that you're being asked to pay that amount. It's just saying, well, you're not eligible for as much need-based aid. If you have a negative SAI or if it's zero or if it's under 2,000, that means you'll have the maximum need-based aid offered. If not, if it's a higher SAI, you might only be offered something like loans or middle-class scholarship. It will also have a point where kind of a summary of each subcategory, like if there's a teach grant, a Pell grant, a Cal grant, a scholarship from your school or an outside scholarship, all of that will be included. If you have a VA educational benefit, like for example, if the parent is a veteran and they have maybe perhaps they're disabled, they might be getting tuition covered at a state school like a CSU or a UC. So, or maybe if the student is using the GI Bill money that the parent didn't use, they'll show if you're getting any VA benefit. So then it'll show, okay, well, what's the net price to you that you'll still have to pay after all these scholarships and grants and everything are applied. And then there's also going to be a portion where they'll show if you have work study and what you've been offered, if you're offered any loans, and any kind of other options for financing. So that's kind of what a sample letter might look like. Here's an example of a different one. And notice that it's not exactly the same. They have it first, they have the financial aid at the top, and then the cost of attendance. And then at the bottom, they have the balance. And then they're also showing at the bottom, okay, well, if you wanted to do 10 payments per year, you would owe us $2,100 a month. If you wanted to do 12 payments a year, it would be $1,800 a month. And they are splitting it into fall and spring, 2 semesters. Sometimes they'll be on the quarter or sometimes on the semester system. So again, these are just samples from other colleges. Notice they all look a little different. They're all going to have the same type of information, but it can be confusing because it's a little like comparing apples to oranges. They're not all formatted the exact same way. I wish they would have some kind of national standard where they would all have to format their financial aid packages the exact same way. There is no such thing right now. Forcing financial aid offices to be able to all do that on the exact same template, but at least you can kind of go through and see, okay, this part is gift aid. Now I know what a scholarship means, what a grant means, what a loan means, and what work study means. One thing that is a really handy tool that I strongly recommend is there is an organization called You Aspire. UASPIRE. And if you Google U Aspire College Cost Calculator, the link will come up and it allows you to see not just the tuition and fees at every college, but it also includes the other parts of cost of attendance, like how much it might be if you were to live on campus, or how much food might cost you for that school year, things like that. And then it lets you compare, okay, well, this is what it would look like at San Diego State versus UC San Diego versus University of Pennsylvania versus Mesa Community College versus The Ohio State, or whatever are your top schools that you're looking at. So if this is just a financial tool, okay, it's not going to go into the admissions portion of it or the academics or anything. But if you're just looking to compare college costs from college to college, U Aspire keeps that information really up to date and makes it easy and accessible for students and families to kind of compare what it would cost for them to attend different colleges. If you happen to be going to college in the state of California, I'm going to recommend at this time of year, if you haven't already done so, I'm assuming you filled out your FAFSA or DREAM Act. If you haven't and you're a 12th grader, make sure you fill it out as soon as possible. And then you are going to create something called a Web Grants for Students account if you're going to attend a college in California. What's in that Web Grants for Students account? It's going to let you see if you're going to receive a Cal grant. It's going to let you see if you qualify for a middle class scholarship. That's where you'll be able to view those things and accept those things. It'll also tell you, now they've integrated something called Cal Kids. So if you're getting a Cal Kids scholarship, that's usually about $500. If you're getting one of those, it'll also show up, your Cal Kids eligibility will show in Web Grants for Students. And once you have decided on a college, you're going to input that in the School of Attendance section, and then they're able to show you, okay, well, if you chose this college, you'll get a Promise grant, or if you chose this college, you'll get a Cal grant, or if and it'll give you that information. By the way, the middle class scholarship is something that is only offered to students in California they're not, quote, low income enough to get need-based aid, but they're not high income enough to just be rich and pay for college. So a middle class scholarship is at a CSU or a UC. It's basically for partial tuition coverage. Usually it covers something like 30% of tuition per year at a UC or a CSU. It's called the middle class scholarship, and that's money that doesn't have to be repaid. Unfortunately, it's not usually going to pay 100% of the tuition, but hey, a little bit is a little bit, right? So take anything that you can get off the price of tuition. So to kind of recap everything we've gone over, when you're deciding which money to accept from a financial aid package, accept the free money first, the gift aid, the grants, and the scholarships. Remember, grants are great. Scholarships are great. Next, you could accept earned money if you're offered any work study, but just remember, in order to get that money, you're going to have to earn it by means of a job. Only borrow what you need and understand the repayment terms. Contact your college financial aid office with questions. They're the ones for the next year, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, however long you're going to be at that college. They're the ones that control the money every year, and they're the ones you want to talk to about, how do I do this? How do I convert my work study to a loan? Or I need to borrow more, or I need to go part-time this quarter. Your financial aid office is going to be able to assist you with that. If you are going to college in California, create a Web Grants for Students account. It's just a simple free online account. For a lot of colleges, they have a deadline of May 1st, which they'll call their student intent to register deadline, or sometimes they call it their accept your offer deadline. Well, that's coming up in just 2 weeks, folks. So usually by the end of April, specifically May 1st, for a lot of universities, that is when they want you to make that decision. And a lot of times you might have to also put a deposit. I'll give you an example. At a UC school like UC San Diego, the deposit they require if you're going to commit there is $250. And it's not refundable, but sometimes it does get covered down the line by financial aid, depending on your SAI. But that is something that they're kind of asking you to put down to keep your spot if you're serious about going to that college. So a lot of universities, they want you to opt in or opt out May 1st. That's their deadline. So keep that in mind. You've got 2 weeks to look at those financial aid offers, decide where you want to go, and make your decision, and then accept your offer. After accepting the offer of admission, then you want to follow the college's financial aid office instructions for accepting your aid, and that'll be online. It's nothing that you have to go in person to do. But this is where you want to check your college portals. You're going to have that like username and password and that email associated with that college for probably a long time to come. And so all the important information that's coming will be coming through that college portal and your student login on that college portal. So these are some of the links that I'm going to have available for you. We have our loan simulator. We have the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau tool. We have the U Aspire College Cost Calculator. We have the Web Grants for California Students website. You also, if you would like to look at just net prices of colleges in California, CSAC puts together a good one, the California Student Aid Commission. And then the UC system, you can also see a UC net price calculator and a CSU net price calculator for CSUs such as San Diego State or Cal State San Marcos. Also, sometimes people say they look at their financial aid and they say, look, this just isn't enough. We need more. Is there any other scholarships? Are there any other loans? Is there any other source of information? Or maybe you've had a change. Maybe you're saying, hey, we filled out this FAFSA using our 2024 tax return. Things have changed and now parents are divorced, or now someone lost a job, or someone, like things have changed financially, or for some other way in your family. Yes, we know that this is what our SAI is, but can we appeal? And there is a process for that you can fill out an appeal of your financial aid package and ask for more money. And maybe you'll get it, maybe you won't. But if you don't get, you don't ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. So make sure that you know that process. They might ask you for certain paperwork, tax returns, W-2s, whatever. But if there's a situation going on where you need more money, you can contact your financial aid office and you can even fill out an official appeal. And I wanted to highlight one other website. There's an organization called Swift Student. And they're actually doing something kind of interesting where they're using AI to help students if they need to create a financial aid appeal to their college's financial aid office. This website actually helps you create that appeal. So it lets you word it in a way that is professional and respectful, but uses the correct terminology. And it makes it so you don't sound entitled, but you're also sounding, that this is an urgent matter. And it kind of helps you actually create that financial aid appeal. So if you go to formswift.com, or if you Google Swift Student, that's actually a good resource to help you if you need help creating a financial aid appeal to that financial aid office. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Are there any questions in the chat, in the Q&A, I'm sorry, that we didn't get to, or did we pretty much get to everything? I don't see anything left in the Q&A. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know that the webinar is scheduled for an hour, but we've all had a long day and it's no problem to end early. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out. I want to give a big thank you to Marcy for staffing that Q&A section. And if people have any questions after the fact, feel free to email me. Again, this will be on our website starting tomorrow, calsoapsandiego.org under the blog section, and we'll include the slide deck as well as this recording. So thank you everybody for coming, and I wish you a lot of luck on your journey. Thanks everybody. Good night.